Welcome to this edition of Ethical Sustainable Investment News and Analysis to Profit By. I'm Ron Robbins, an ethical investing pioneer for over 40 years, quoted in the Wall Street Journal, MarketWatch, the Globe and Mail, and numerous other media, and founder of the highly respected global ethical sustainable investing information website, Investing for the Soul. And please listen to my disclaimer statement at the end of this podcast. Now enjoy this podcast. Hello, Ron Robbins here. Welcome to podcast episode 30, published on April 24th, 2020, titled Sustainable Investments Making Our World Better and More. Presented by Investing for the Soul. Investingforthesoul.com is your site for vital global, ethical, and sustainable investing news, commentary, information, and resources. Remember that you can find a full transcript, links to content, including stock symbols and bonus material, at this episode's podcast page located at investingforthesoul.com/podcasts, and Google any terms that are unfamiliar to you. With much of the investment industry in lockdown, the news flow is down incredibly. Hence, this podcast is somewhat shorter than normal. Some of you might have heard the name BlackRock. BlackRock is the largest money management firm in the world. Well, the company was recently called upon by the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve to manage the buying of massive amounts of bonds and mortgage-backed securities. Now that same firm has just launched the BlackRock Global Impact Fund. Writing on the climatechange.com site under the title BlackRock launches Sustainable Investing Focused Impact Fund, Camilla Watkis says that the fund, quote, enables investors to direct finance towards companies that are supporting the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, end quote. Well, that's great. Also, BlackRock's chairman and CEO, Larry Fink, gained notoriety earlier this year by proposing that sustainable investing is both here and now and the way of the future. Quoting him, he said that every government, company, and shareholder must confront climate change. We will be increasingly disposed to vote against management and board directors when companies are not making sufficient progress on sustainability-related disclosures and the business practices and plans underlying them, end quote. Since BlackRock is hugely influential in the investment world, their stance on sustainable investments making our world better has sent shockwaves throughout the investment industry. Now, as you know from my previous posts, companies and funds emphasizing sustainability and ESG principles are doing better than their conventional equivalents, even in these down markets. Now, Tom Lydon, in his article titled Crisis Reveals Utility of Emphasizing Conscious Companies, describes his favorite fund in this regard. It appeared on the ETF Trend site. Mr. Lydon says that tough times can reveal a lot about a person. The same is true of corporate reaction to crisis, and investors are getting a real-time taste for how companies are dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. That's also shedding light on ETFs, such as the Global X Conscious Companies ETF. Further, he says that the Global X Conscious Companies ETF, which turns 4 years old in July, tries to reflect the performance of the Concinnity Conscious Companies Index, which tracks companies that achieve financial performance in a sustainable and responsible manner and exhibit positive environmental, social, and corporate governance characteristics. Its methodology focuses on stakeholders such as customers, suppliers, stock and debt holders, local communities, and notably employees, according to Global X. End quotes. This next article recommends 4 stocks that have appeared in this podcast many times. Hence, I almost hesitated to repeat them. But with so little news flow, and seeing that they are still top-of-the-line holdings of most ESG funds, I reconsidered. So here they are. The article is titled, Coronavirus Crisis Brings These 4 ESG Stocks in Focus, and is written by Zacks researchers. I found it on the Yahoo Finance site. I'll mention the name of each company and then follow it with a quote. 1. Microsoft Corporation. It has taken a leap in corporate social responsibility and supports its staff with regular pay, even as several companies across the world have announced layoffs and salary cuts. Microsoft's expected earnings growth rate for the current year is 17.3%, compared with Zacks Computer Software Industry's projected earnings growth of 3.2%. Microsoft carries a Zacks rank number 3, which is a hold. 2 is chipmaker NVIDIA Corporation. Makes a mark among ESG stocks with a strict policy regarding conflict materials. The company's expected earnings growth rate for the current year is 22.1% against the Zacks Semiconductor General Industries projected earnings decline of 12.7%. NVIDIA carries a Zacks rank number 3. Third, the Procter & Gamble Company. The company provides branded consumer packaged goods. The company's expected earnings growth rate for the current year is 9.5% against the Zacks Soap and Cleaning Material Industries projected earnings decline of 1.1%. The Procter & Gamble Company carries a Zacks rank number 3. And number 4 is Next Era Energy Inc. The company is responsible for the generation and supply of energy throughout most of the state of Florida through its regulated subsidiaries. Its ESG ratings have remained unchanged amid the coronavirus outbreak. The company's expected earnings growth rate for the current year is 8.1%, compared with the Zacks Utility Electric Power Industries projected earnings growth of 3.6%. Next Era Energy carries a Zacks rank number 3. End quotes. There are links on this podcast page to free Zacks reports on these companies. Well, these are my top news stories and tips for this podcast. Sustainable investments making our world better over the past 2 weeks. And to get all the links, stock symbols and more, or to read the transcript of this podcast and with additional information too, please go to investingforthesoul.com/podcasts and scroll down to this episode. Also, be sure to click the like and subscribe buttons in iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you download or listen to this podcast. And please click the share buttons to share this podcast with your friends and family. That way you can help promote not only this podcast, but ethical and sustainable investing globally. So let's help create a better world with our investments contact me if you have any questions. Do stay well and healthy, and stay wise with your investments in these deeply troubling times. Thank you for listening. Talk to you again on May 8th. Bye for now. Learn how to create a simple portfolio reflecting your personal values by taking my 1-hour tutorial. Go to investingforthesoul.com/podcasts and click the link in the right-hand column for my DIY Ethical Sustainable Investing Pays tutorial. Now, I'll mention in the podcast if I have any direct interest or holdings in companies or securities I'm talking about. Furthermore, any news, opinions, analysis, or other information offered by myself, as well as references and information to or from other external sources in this podcast, is provided as general market information and should not be relied upon, and thus does not constitute investment advice. Investors should consult their own licensed investment professional before making investments. Also, I will not accept liability for any loss or damage, including without limitation any loss of profit which may arise directly or indirectly from use of or reliance on information in this podcast. Do contact me at ronr@investingforthesoul.com. Signing off, this is Ron Robbins.